I now call this regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. I would like to announce that the agenda item 7.02 special education update will be removed and placed on the next committee of the whole agenda on August 10th, 2020. We will go into open forum. And in order to participate in open forum, you need to dial into this number, 563-445-5001, and enter the following conference ID number, 4731627. Everyone who wants to participate in open forum, please give me your name so everyone can be acknowledged. And when your name is called, identify yourself by stating your name and address. And also, when you're giving your name, can you spell it out? And you will have 2 minutes to speak.
So now,
Toby Bale, right?
Hey, Dan, I think your conference number wasn't right. It was 4731672. I think you transposed the last two.
Okay, the conference ID is 4731672. Good.
okay, so now you want to ask for, we were gonna go ahead and make all this first, right?
Yeah.
Just to make sure that we had everything.
Yep.
So go ahead and I'm gonna pull it up
Okay.
and just ask each person to identify.
Is there anybody on the line that is wanting to participate in open forum? If you could
Yes,
please give
please.
me your name.
Ann McGlynn.
Say that again?
Can you say that again, please?
Ann, A-N-N, McGlynn, M-C-G-L-Y-N-N.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to participate in open forum? Is there anyone else wishing to participate in open forum?
I'm sorry, I am wishing to participate. My name is John Arnold. It's JOHN-ARNOLD. I'm sorry, I am wishing to participate.
And they need to mute.
Make sure you mute your phones after you talk, please. Is there anybody else wishing to participate in open forum?
Ask if Toby's there.
Toby Payon, are you on the line?
Okay, I'd say go ahead.
Go with her first.
And then him, and then ask after that if there's anybody else.
All right. First up, we will go with Ann McGlynn, and then we will go with John Arnold. If you could please state your name, spell it, and give your address. And when you're done talking, please mute your phone. And then I will call on
Hi,
Mr. Arnold.
Sorry, I was on mute. I would also like to speak. My name is Leslie Klipsch.
Leslie Klipsch.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I will add you to the list. Could everyone please mute your phone? We are getting a lot of background noise. And if Ann McGlynn could speak now during open forum, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Ann McGlynn, and I live at 3009 Grand Avenue, Davenport. I have 2 children at Central this coming year. I am the executive director of Tapestry Farms, an organization that walks with 13 children from refugee families who are at McKinley, Buchanan, Fillmore, Adams, Williams, and West. Thank you for your leadership in advocating for Davenport schools being online only when school starts in August. I really hope the state will change course and allow school districts to make their own choices, or at least liberally grant a waiver to Davenport and others. I do encourage this board to consider
And
an
can you hang on
anti-racist.
one second? Can everybody please mute your phones? We can barely hear her with all the background noise. It's the little button with the microphone that has a slash through it. Please push that and mute your phone. Thank you. You may continue, ma'am. I apologize about that.
That is much better. No, that's okay. Thank you for interrupting. Oh, the sound is still happening, I think. Thank you for your leadership in advocating for Davenport schools being online only when school starts in August. I really hope the state will change course and allow local school districts to make their own choices, or at least liberally grant a waiver to Davenport and others. I do encourage the board to consider an anti-racism mindset with whatever model is ultimately chosen, as 45% of the district students are students of color. It is clear that COVID-19 disproportionately impacts people of color. That is one significant reason why I support an online model. I also encourage school district leaders to ask about, listen to, and consider what families of color will need in order for their children to be as successful as possible. From Ibram Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist. Racist policy is any measure that produces or sustains racial inequity between racial groups. An anti-racist policy is any measure that produces or sustains racial equity between racial groups. By policy, I mean written. Procedures, processes, regulations, and guidelines that govern people. There is no such thing as a non-racist or race-neutral policy. Every policy in every institution in every community in every nation is producing or sustaining either racial inequity or equity between racial groups. Please know that our organization, Tapestry Farms, will be working with the educators of our 13 kids, all of whom are in ESL and one of whom has an IEP, to make this school year the best that it could possibly be. I do encourage the board to have a clear plan for all kids of color as we move into what will most likely be a challenging year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. John Arnold, if you could please state your name, spell it, and address. You're up.
Hi, I'm John Arnold. I have 2 kids in the district. I live at 437 East 30th Street in Davenport, and I teach science in the district. But in light of issues of social unrest in our nation this summer, we hope our district embraces social justice as a priority moving forward. It was refreshing to hear the discussion on SROs in our district last week, and I hope the conversation continues and expands it to address, a broader concern for our students. And as the data becomes available on SROs, it'd be imperative for the discussion to continue with our students and community. But Dr. Kobilski's video earlier this summer in June addressed to our community, and he expressed joining with our community and focusing on the roots, the systemic racism, and education as part of the solution, and building equity for our kids. So as he said, the 15,000 students that are watching, they deserve a positive experience. And of course, there's another crisis at hand that can't be avoided, but this also can't be avoided. It needs to be part of the focus. So I appreciate the efforts that are being made. The Check and Connect program the district is doing, and at West, Mentors in Violence Prevention is an example of a school doing good things. But more effort towards programs like restorative justice for our students in our community. But we can't allow the momentum of this summer's calls for social justice to fizzle out. And I just want to make sure that we, as a community, can focus on education as part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Leslie Klipsch, you're next.
She might still be muted.
Ask her.
Leslie, are you there? You might still have your phone on mute.
Oh, hello.
That's
This is
better.
Leslie. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
It's Leslie, Leslie, Klipsch, Klipsch. I live at 916 Grand Court in Davenport. I'm the mom to a daughter who attends Washington Elementary, a son who attends Sudlow, and a son who attends Central. And I really appreciate this moment. I'm grateful for your time and just for all of the time that you devote to our school district and therefore the community that we all share, especially during these difficult times. I wanted to speak today in support of all of the work that you're doing and in thanks for the Return to Learn plan, and also with a strong desire to make our district better for students of color and thus our entire community. Both of my sons are white, and I believe that they would be best served knowing the full history of our country. I believe all of our white students need the black and brown classmates that occupied nearly half of their classes in elementary school to continue to challenge them and learn with them, as the honors and AP classes have much less racial diversity. My white sons need to study Black authors and Black art and Black experience and Black joy. My daughter is African American, and she deserves teachers who are working right now to acknowledge implicit bias in the ways that it plays out in classrooms. She needs teachers and administrators who are closely examining the racism that's baked into our system. She and her peers deserve teachers and administrators and a superintendent and a school board who are wonderful and who are kind and who are also actively dismantling white supremacy and advocating for anti-racist curriculum and policies every single day and in every single decision, whether learning in person or online. As you all know, the mission of our school district is to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. I think a greatness of Davenport is that it's diverse. And in this way, we're unique in comparison with surrounding districts. And I believe that this is something that we should be celebrating. This is something to celebrate. So I want to celebrate all of you in your discussion of school resource officers at the last board meeting. I thank you for having that discussion. And I hope that us as a district and you as our leadership continue to have those conversations and to invite students and teachers of color to take a place at the table for their perspective and their experience. I also celebrate the addition of an equity innovator. Thank you again for showing your commitment to racial justice through that action. I hope that as decision makers and as us as a community, we can support this role with everything that we can. I celebrate board member Allison Beck's suggestion to read a book focused on learning about implicit bias and racism within the classroom and the ways that we can change individual behavior and systems of oppression. And I challenge the board and district leaders and teachers and fellow community members to read and learn together about this history of racism in our country and how that now, today, in the midst of this moment of pandemic and protest across the country, that it's still negatively impacting our students. I also celebrate the statement made by the Equity Committee that was read at the earlier board meeting in June, and I would challenge that as a district and as a board, the Davenport schools come out with their own strong statement in support of Black Lives Matter. I want to just thank you again for your efforts in these really, really challenging times, and I pledge as a parent to do my part in support of this work alongside you and everyone at the Davenport Community Schools, because we need to. We need to make our community better and safer and more just for everyone. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Is there anyone else wanting to participate in open forum?
Yes, just John Keeley with the Davenport Education Association.
Okay, John, hang on one second. Is there anybody else that is wanting to participate in open forum? Is there anyone else wanting to participate in open forum? John Keeley, you are up. When you start speaking, please state your name, spell it, and your address.
Okay. John Keeley, Davenport Education Association President, 3240 Lorton Avenue, Davenport, Iowa, 52807. First things, we would like to say that I, as the member of the Davenport Education Association, has presented a resolution with the COVID-19 resolution, which addresses the issues of safety going back to school. However, our executive board had voted unanimously on this resolution, and I signed it on July 16th. I had been talking and working with Dr. Kabilski, with Toby Payon, our UNICEF director, on these issues, and it seemed to be very much that we were on the same plane. And then the proclamation by the governor the next day threw everything up in the air. Although this resolution was definitely unanimously passed by our executive board, it gives us great reassurance that in receiving some of the material that Dr. Kabilski and the school district has put out, it very much complies with a lot of the suggestions, if not nearly all, that we consider the best interest for our students and staff. We are in full support of the district's waiver that Dr. Kabilski has submitted, and I'd like to also thank him and the school board that when trying to address this issue, which is, in my 26 years of teaching, probably the most dire that I've ever seen, they didn't exactly turn to individuals that their credibilities would be questionable. They turned to the health officials, Dr. Lewis Katz of Scott County. And the DEA truly believes that online learning, is really the only option until Dr. Katz says that it's safe to go back to schools. This is not our first choice. I've been teaching for 26 years. My colleagues want to be in class. They want to be with the kids. They want to get there and help them be part of their lives. But the safety of the students and the staff, especially in present-day situation, we feel the only answer is what Dr. Kabilski has said, what Dr. Katz has said, is online learning. And until we get the thumbs up where people like Dr. Katz and other experts say it's in the clear, online learning, we think, should be the major option. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for all you guys have done. I know you guys put a lot of work into it, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else wishing to participate in open forum?
Mr. Vice President.
Yes, sir.
I also have another resolution that we would like to talk to, if I could have 2 minutes, please. This would be for Jamie Walker Solis. She is the chairman of, one of the two chairmen for the district's multicultural committee, but something came up where she could not speak on the issue, and she asked me to speak in her place, if that is all right with the body.
Yes, sir, Mr. Keeley, go right ahead.
Thank you very much again, school board. The DEA multicultural group also works with members of the Davenport administration, have reviewed the results of a survey sent out to all members of the DEA regarding SROs in our school. The survey has brought up more questions than answers. And in assessing the survey, these are the issues that the multicultural group consider to be very vital in the upcoming years. We have to ask the question, what is the purpose of SROs in our school? How do we monitor or evaluate their purpose? And is that being met? How often do SROs deal directly with criminal activities in our building? This committee is requesting data on the actions of the SROs, including charging students with crimes and ticketing parents that may occur. This information would be most useful if it was broken down by building, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. What is the role of the SRO versus a security officer? It was clear in the responses that teachers were using the terms interchangeably, and we feel obviously that there's a difference, but we need clarification on both points, please. What is the training the district has provided SROs regarding the expectations of their job, discipline procedures, and other vital aspects of everyday learning in our district? And what professional development has been given or planned for all staff on de-escalation techniques and restorative justice? Many teachers have mentioned that they want more support in their buildings as a possibility, and that they did not feel prepared to de-escalate situations involving students. These questions are important for our teachers and our community before we can move forward in understanding the role of the SROs in our district. We ask that the board look into this and provide us the information to the public. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you again, John.
Yep.
Thank you again, John.
Oh, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else wishing to participate in open forum? Is there anyone else wishing to participate in open forum? Seeing and hearing none, I will ask for a motion for the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Where's Allison? She was going to do this.
She's got to pull it out of discussion.
Allison was going to do that.
Is there a second?
Mr. Vice President,
Yes, Director Klein Jerome.
could you tell Allison to *6 so that she can unmute herself? Because I was muted, but the district has muted us. I think the board members aren't sure how to get their voice back on.
Can you guys hear me now?
I
Yes,
can.
we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Okay. I would like to make a motion to remove the pandemic specialist from the consent agenda and make it an action item, please.
You don't have to have a motion for that, just a request.
Oh, okay. I'd like to request that we remove the pandemic specialist from the consent agenda and put it under action items, please.
Okay, that'll be done. Thank you, Director Beck. Can I get a second to Director Passion's motion to approve the consent agenda, minus moving the COVID specialist to the items requiring action? Was that you,
Yes, I
Director
second.
Hayes?
Yes.
All right. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
I have two questions. On June 22nd, in the minutes, it said that an interim organizational chart would be released, and I don't believe that I, as a board member, ever received that. I'm not sure if anybody else did. So could we sometime in the next week see that organizational chart? And my question is, also, we have some teacher in charge versus a SAM. I know there's some administrators on here. If they could explain the difference and how a building gets a teacher in charge versus a SAM.
We don't discuss during consent, so I can give him a memo. I can give her a memo answering the question.
That would be great. I actually sent this question to Mary earlier in the week, and I did not receive an answer. So I would appreciate that.
Okay, the superintendent said he will send an email out with that information to the board.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing
I have
none. Uh,
I have a question on 3.08. Just a quick question. There were, I want to say, 29 teachers that were taking the training. Will there be others added at a later point?
Bonnie should be on the line. Bonnie? Bonnie?
Ask for Bonnie, see if Bonnie has anything.
okay. I thought you didn't want to discuss anything on there, but you want to ask.
Well,
Okay,
we don't, but I could get her that answer tomorrow.
it's fine.
Bonnie asked.
Bonnie Assey, are you on the line that you could answer Director Hayes' question?
Or Tara Parrish.
Or Tara Parrish, one of the two of you, would you be able to answer Director Hayes' question?
Or Corey Guy.
Or Corey Guy?
They're all supposed to be on. I told them all to be on.
Unless they're all muted by Joe.
Nobody's muted except for Lucy Cruz.
Okay. Maybe that's-
Dan, this is Corey Guy. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Okay, I can answer the question. Bonnie is on the line, but if she cannot answer, I can help.
Okay, perfect, whichever one.
Linda, Director Hayes, could you repeat the question?
Yes, I'm wondering with the sensory education contract, 29 teachers scheduled for that. Will there be more added at a later date? Is that something that all the teachers in the district will have at some point?
Okay, this is for Orton Gillingham training, and earlier there was a contract for special education teachers to get this sensory. It's a reading program. It's training for certain students. This contract is in addition to that one, the training that happened for our special education teachers, and it's specific to our elementary reading interventionists. This is not something that all students would get as part of their core instruction, but something that would assist students who have that specific, might need that specific type of instruction to learn how to read.
Okay, thank you so much, Corey.
No problem.
Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will now call for the vote. Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director
Can you hear me
Klein-Jerome?
now?
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
And Director Mayfield and Potts are not on, and my vote is yes. Motion carries. Can I get a motion on the approval of bills? Director Poston.
Recommend the following resolution is recommended by the administration for adoption of the bills. For the bill listing periods 6/18/20 to 6/29/20, 6/30/20 to 7/8/20, and 7/9/20 to 7/22/20.
I second it.
What else do you need?
You gotta read the resolved all claims presented to the.
Resolved all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the period 6/18/20 to 6/29/20, 6/30/20 to 7/8/20, 7/9/20, to 7/22/20.
Can I get a
Second.
second? Perfect, thank you.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will now call for the vote. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
and Director Mayfield and Director Potts are not on. My vote is yes. Motion carries. Item 5, the superintendent report. Turn that over to you, Dr. Kozlowski.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and I will dedicate this report to an update on district finances, knowing that we have quite a bit to discuss when we get to our return to learn conversation later on, as well as our conversation regarding our upcoming August 5th meeting with the State Board of Education. A couple pieces that I would like to draw to the board's attention. If you would take a look at your document that's titled Davenport Community School District Revised Certified Budget, and you'll see the projection for the year shows a $20 million in the black. Let me tell you that there are a whole host of expenditures in the month of June that still have not been processed yet, to include the summertime salary that our teachers and staff get through the summer, but are actually charged to June. So you're going to see that number go down. In addition, that number represents the $4 million in CARES Act money that we received as a school district. So that's another reason that that number is inflated. At the end of the day, I'm cautiously optimistic with our interim CFO, Lisa Cruz, that we will have a positive unspent balance, but I don't want to make that commitment today because there's still so much information. But I do believe that we've had substantial savings in a couple different areas as a result of the way the fourth quarter of the school year played out. But I don't want to make an announcement and have egg on my face in a month because the numbers came back differently. But I am cautiously optimistic that we're moving in that direction. When it comes to the budgeting, I know it's very important for the board. When you approved my recommendation to bring on Gary Sinclair as well as Forecast 5, I'm having a conversation with Gary tomorrow, and it's my intention to have him at the very next board meeting so that he can provide you that independent analysis of where we are. At the end of the day, we'll know essentially at the end of August where the year has unfolded. And what I'll say at this point in time is I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll have a positive unspent balance. So don't be overly optimistic by that $20 million number. I still expect it to be black, but it certainly won't. It won't reflect the dollar value that you're seeing there. Next document that I think I can draw to your attention that would you should probably take a look at because it's in the red. So I'm looking at the statement of revenues, expenditures, and surplus and deficit. And if you look at that, and if you go all the way to the bottom where it talks about surplus and deficit, you'll see that we do have a deficit in our management fund. It's not unusual to have one from time to time. We still have a healthy ending fund balance of over $5 million in our management fund. But I did want to draw that to your attention, and we will parse out the details of that to make sure that we have an understanding of where that number comes. And we'll work with Gary and Lisa to make sure that you have your answers for that. If you continue looking at our documentation, which has the statement of revenues, expenditures, same piece, and if you take a look at the nutrition fund, which is on the very next page, it's beyond the general fund, under expenditures. If you can see that, there's a red line of $627,000. If I could just draw your attention to that. As you know, that's basically our food service fund, and our food service fund is self-funding. They theoretically and ideally at the end of the year should be at a zero balance. They should have expenditures that are meeting up with their revenues. One of the things that we experienced this year, and again, these aren't the final numbers, these are through May. We do expect that number to go down, but one of the things that happened is, as you know, we served quite a lot of meals over the course of our closure during the COVID epidemic, especially in the fourth quarter. Team did a stellar job of getting meals out to needy families and students in need, and I congratulate them for that. One of the pieces, though, that's a second part of the story is we didn't have students in the lunchroom buying lunch. So the revenue dropped, if that makes sense. So the revenue that we were anticipating for that particular fund was not as great as what was budgeted for and what we were anticipating. However, many of our expenses with regard to meal preparation, especially the meal distribution that were at the sites during the virus, caused that number. Second number that should draw your attention as you were looking at these documents is the Internal Services Fund, where it shows a $6.5 million deficit. Please know that much of that number is the self-insurance component of that particular fund, and it's a result of the district taking 3 insurance holidays this year, which was part of our funding package that we presented to the SPRC. So that's a reason you see that number quite large there, and you shouldn't see that again moving forward. So that was an expense that I think you needed to be, that needed to be pointed out to you, because those were the pieces that drew my attention. And then we do have Lisa Cruz on the line in the event that you would have any questions with regard to the Secretary's monthly financial report on that. So if there's questions that I can't answer tonight, I will. If you have more detailed questions that require additional investigation, I will certainly get that back to the board. But I think the pieces that I highlighted tonight, again, those were the elements that drew my attention. And if I were a board member, those were the pieces that I would have asked. So hopefully I gave you your answers ahead of time, but certainly be willing to take any questions with regard to the financial update.
Does anyone have any questions for the superintendent? Does anyone have any questions for the superintendent? Third and final time, does anyone have any questions for the superintendent? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to items requiring action. For the public hearing, to participate in the public hearing, please dial 563-445-5001. Conference ID is 473-1672. May I have a motion on the approval of plans and specifications for the DSCD LIS data closet cooling project?
Mr. Vice President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the plans and specifications for the Davenport Community School District LIS data closet cooling project.
Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing approval of plans and specifications for the DSCD LIS data closet cooling project. The notice of the public hearing was published in the Quad City Times on July 17th, 2020. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward on the phone. State your name and address for the record. Is there anyone wishing to participate? Is there anyone wishing to participate? Is there anyone wishing to participate? Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any further discussion on this matter?
Yes, I have a question. Is Gary Float on the line?
Yes, ma'am, he is.
Gary, could you please explain exactly what this is?
Yes. Last year, we put in a whole bunch of new switch equipment that we got through E-rate funding into our closets. At that time, it was determined that we were going to need cooling in these closets, some of these closets. We were making estimates at the time as to what amount of cooling would be needed, and decided that the most prudent path to get this done would be to get the closets assembled and see how the heat either dissipated or needed to be cooled. By doing that, we were able to save quite a bit of money and cool only the closets that really required the extra cooling. So it was a good path for us to take.
Okay, thanks.
Gary, if I could just jump in, if we do not cool these closets, what's the consequence of that?
Well, these are the machines that keep all of our computers talking to each other in the building, and when they overheat and go down, we lose the ability to have that kind of technical communication. So they're kind of like nerve endings in our buildings.
Thank you.
Will there be some type of alarm system on that if the cooling system goes down, you'll know about it?
Yes, that's a feature. We also have UPS backup battery systems on these machines, and they also report home when they're having trouble.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? With no further questions, I'm going to call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. All right. Can I get a motion for the approval of the SU insurance contract?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the SU insurance contract in the amount of $282,867.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Postian.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Can I get a motion on the approval of the Rock Valley contract?
Mr. Vice President,
Yes, Director Hayes.
I recommend the board approve the contract with Rock Valley Physical Therapy in the amount of $81,004.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Director Postian. Is there any discussion? Any discussion?
If we don't use this service, is there like a clause in there to get some rebate or refund?
No, I have, there's no clause to that effect. We are hoping to have a sports season in some manner, shape, and form as we enter the school year. Our football team has already started practicing outside. So we need their services right now, and our hope is that, we'll continue to utilize their services. But there is no clause for non-use. There'll be some form of use throughout the course of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Can I get a motion on the approval of the Lexia contract?
Mr. Chairman,
Director Poston.
Recommend the board approve the Lexia contract in the amount of $67,360.50.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries.
Well, we
Right,
still
we
have
gotta do the
policies.
approval of the policy. too.
Okay.
Can I get approval of policy?
Mr. Vice President,
Yes, Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA policy.
Mr. President, I would request that we add into the motion that we waive the first reading and enact the policy as this is second reading, which the board has the authority to do both in our policy and by statute. So Director Beck would just have to add.
Director Beck, do you want to add that to your motion?
Yes, and along with that, so I'll start over. I move that the board approve the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA policy, and waive the first reading per emergency guidelines.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, I have our new HR Director, Jamie Weinzierl, here, who can explain to the board why this is coming up so quickly and why it's so important. If you feel that you'd like to hear that narrative, she'd be happy to share that information with you and the entire board and the community.
Jamie, you're up. We haven't got to hear from you, so we'll let you go.
Welcome.
Thank you all so much. So really, this is a policy for our employees, just showing them what their rights are under the federal regulations. So there's extended FMLA in the situation with schools not being in session in certain circumstances where employees do have protection to take time off to care for their children while they're in school. And then there's also the 2 weeks on the front end of emergency time in the event that you are told you have to isolate yourself or go into quarantine or any situations surrounding a positive COVID-19 test. So really, this is a way to communicate to our employees the guidelines and parameters of this act and ensure that it's easy for them to understand and to provide that guidance.
And per legal counsel, it was recommended that we create policy as opposed to just administrative guidelines.
Thank you for that.
I have a quick question. This is Director Beck again.
Go ahead, Director Beck.
So I see that it's only valid through December 31st, 2020. Will we need to vote to remove this policy once that date hits or reevaluate it?
Yes, one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. And now we have new item 6.06, the Pandemic COVID Operational Specialist Operations Center. I think I said all that right.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as an introduction, as everyone knows, our Operations Center has quite a bit to do during the summertime. Our maintenance teams and custodians are getting our buildings ready under normal circumstances. Keep in mind that we also have responsibilities now that we have sixth grade in our elementary schools, making sure that all of our sixth grade classrooms are ready to go and our teacher materials are there for those sixth grade classes in our elementary schools. Also in the process of moving the Creative Arts Academy from the downtown campus to Sudlow. That is certainly a heavy lift for us. And at the same time, there are a whole host of COVID-related procedures and practices that need to be implemented across the district from a safety perspective. It begins with working with a strategic plan as to how we're going to keep our students and our faculty safe during face-to-face instruction in our schools. It involves procuring proper PPE as well as other items that we need, including signage, and that's just scratching the surface of the work that needs to be done with regard to ordering. We are going to have individuals who are going to be taping lines down the middle of hallways so students walk down the right-hand side. As I mentioned, all the cleaning, all the extra sanitation equipment, and the hand washing protocols have to ensure that we have clean facilities. All of our water fountains, for example, have to be recalibrated so that they can only utilize filling of bottles as opposed to leaning over and taking a drink that you're used to doing. So you can imagine there are a whole host of things that need to be done. As you see on our consent agenda tonight, which was approved by the board, we do have a brand new operations director who will be starting in hopefully late August is the time frame that we have now. But since we have so much work to do, we need to have a COVID pandemic czar is probably the best way I can describe it, who has not only an intimate understanding of the infrastructure of this district, knowing every square inch of our buildings, but also someone who can organize the vast efforts that are taking place to keep our staff safe. Right now, I have different individuals that are ordering face masks. I have different individuals that are working with the bus company on how to make sure the buses get clean. I have different individuals working with schools and custodians and maintenance workers to get those pieces in place. And one of the other big pieces we have to manage is making sure that we have a secondary health room. Right now we have a nurse's office, but we know that we have to have a second health room in the event that a student presents with symptoms of the COVID virus. All that building, all that infrastructure needs to be managed, and we need one person that can report directly to me so that I feel safe and that I can report to the Board of Education that we're doing everything possible, not only to keep our faculty and students safe, but to help with our communication. I know we're getting a whole host of questions from our community that are very specific on a number of topics when it comes to safety, as they have to determine whether or not they want to voluntarily go full online with their students or go with the 50% model if that's the way we start the school year. So my recommendation to the school board is to approve this position for a 6-month period of time, to be reevaluated after 6 months. And if after 6 months everything is going great and we're organized, we can certainly move on. But if we need to continue this position, I would bring that to the board's attention. So this is a non-bargaining at-will position. And I do believe it would solve a whole host of things that keep me up at night as the superintendent, not only with the usual summer work that needs to get done, but the extra summer work with the changes that I've mentioned, but most importantly, a point person who can effectively manage all aspects of this COVID pandemic and keep our buildings clean, keep our staff and students and our community safe. And that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Can I get a motion on this?
Mr. Vice President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the position of COVID pandemic specialist. Shoot, I didn't get the words right. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Sorry. I move that the board approve the position of Pandemic COVID Operational Specialist Operations Center.
With the position being?
With the position being for 6 months.
Oh, with the position to be reevaluated
in 6 months?
Yes.
Thank you, Director Beck.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Third and final time, is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
my vote is yes. Motion carries. We will move on to discussion items. The return to learn. Mr. Superintendent, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. A lot to discuss on this topic this evening. I'm going to begin with a conversation that relates very specifically to health and safety. And I would like to assure the community that even through this summer, we've worked very closely with the Department of Health, as well as members of the Department of Education, and making sure that we have our protocols correct in the event that either a student or a staff member tests positive for COVID, and how do we react as a school system. And I think it's important for our community to know that that protocol is such that if we are informed that either a staff member or a student has tested positive for COVID, sometimes we are notified by the actual individuals, because they sometimes get the information a little bit before the health department does. However, the health department does notify us of that positive test, or we could reach out to them with a specific name if we do hear from a family or from a staff member, and they can confirm that for us. Once that has taken place, the health department takes over all communication with not only the individual who's tested positive, but the health department takes control of all the contact tracing and communication associated with individuals that were within proximity of that student. And what I mean by that is the guidelines are very specific. So for example, I'm just going to give an example. If a student in a classroom tested positive for COVID, what the health department requirements would be for contact tracing is they would contact every individual who was within 6 feet of that student for a period of 15 minutes. That's the rule. So typically, it would probably be just the students in close proximity to the student that was sitting in the classroom, or perhaps students that were sitting perhaps a little too close during the lunchroom, even though we're making arrangements with our cafeterias and our meal space to expand that so that we can have the proper social distancing. But I have to make it very clear to the community that we have HIPAA and FERPA requirements, that we're not allowed to offer any health information to interested parents in the class. Can't provide any information, whether that be a staff member or a student. All of that communication comes from the health department. So that's been a little point of confusion. Parents have been asking, how come we weren't notified whenever? We've had 2 incidents over the summer, one a student, one a staff member, and the questions were, when was I going to hear from the school district? Or the answer is, you're going to hear from the health department. They're the ones that are going to tell you what to do. If you don't hear from the health department, you come to school the next day. That's really as simple as it gets. That's the rule. We do not anticipate, based on the guidelines of 6 feet for 15 minutes, that, and I'll tell you this right now, if we have one student who tests positive, and someone will, it's going to happen. I'll just tell you that right now. We're not going to close a whole school down because one person tested positive. We're not even going to shut an entire classroom down if one person tests positive. They have to fit that 6 foot 15 minutes rule. So, that's a clear piece that we're going to make sure that we put out as often as possible, so that not only our staff understands that, but our parents understand that the main communication link will be with the health department. But again, the contact tracing is based on that 6 feet for 15 minutes criteria, which would prevent us from having to shut down a school or a classroom with a single COVID response. So I think that's an important point that I wanted to make at the very beginning. Any board members have any questions on that particular aspect of the presentation? Because I know there's been some questions about that in the community already, knowing that we've had some summer programs taking place. Before I get into the actual.
Mr. Vice President,
Director Beck.
is that 15 minutes with or without masks in place?
So if you have, you know what, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. If you have a mask in place, it's just one element of the safety protocol. But if you were within close proximity of someone who tested positive for COVID, again, within 6 feet for 15 minutes, my understanding is with or without mask, you will probably be hearing from the health department when they contact that individual and start doing their contact tracing. But I'll get a clarification.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Any other questions? I guess I have a couple,
Sure.
but I don't even know where to start. 6 foot apart for 15 minutes. So I'm a huge sports guy. Everybody knows that. Wrestling, football, you're like right here to each other. So are those players 6 foot back, and instead of tackling you, it's like flag football now? Or what are we doing there? Because I mean, and then what do you do there? Do you shut down the whole team? Do you because I mean, you're way closer than 6 foot.
So again, it's in that situation, if you're on a football team and I'm the quarterback and you're the center, over the course of a football game, we're together for more than 15 minutes and we're not 6 feet apart. So if I'm the quarterback and I test positive, you're going to hear from the health department to tell you, and they'll give you directions as to what you need to do as part of that contact tracing process. So it's all in the context of what we're doing, whether it's a classroom, a football field, a soccer field, anything that we do, they're going to have to look at the specific circumstances and make a determination of what is the 15 minutes, what is the 6 feet, and my suspicion is that that's a health department decision. So when someone tests positive, they explain the circumstances because it's the health department's responsibility to do the contact tracing. So they will ask questions like, are you on the football team? Do you take the bus? You know, all those types of pieces. But that's on the health department to ask those questions, and the health department has the responsibility of contacting the individuals that fall within that circle of contact that was in that meets that parameter.
Okay. It just blows my mind how all this works, because I could have had it at this game with you, and then we went to the next game. And I'll even use baseball tournaments for an example. Everybody's hugging on everybody and everything else. And I understand you're not going to please everybody. Some people think it's a joke and it's a fake thing. And, you know, I've known people that died from it. I don't think it's, it's a serious thing. And it's wild on what we're going to put our kids through. It just blows my mind. And then.
And our adults, because our staff is at risk with this, and we have to be very careful. I agree.
I think you answered my questions. I'll let you move on.
So with regard to Return to Learn, back on June 22nd, the Board of Education approved our Return to Learn plan, which had 3 separate components to it. There was a full online protocol. There was a hybrid protocol that had for a percentage of time in class and a percentage of time online. And then there was a full face-to-face protocol. We had planned for all 3 of those scenarios. I want to thank everyone who was involved with this. I've said this on a number of occasions. We've had over 100 staff members working on this. And I think it's also very important for the public to know that, yes, the staff members put in hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, but this school board had one member of the school board on every single one of those committees. And the school board all along the way knew what we were planning, knew what we were talking about, added input as a community member that was of great value to our committees and our groups. And on behalf of all of the professionals and educators and support staff that was worked on this particular model. They wanted me to say thank you to the school board for your willingness to roll up your sleeves and get into the trenches with us and get this work done. So please accept our thanks for that work. As you heard a little bit earlier, we had a little bit of a curveball on July 17th. As I was listening to Dr. Katz and having conversations, personal conversations with him, group conversations with him and county health officials, I was growing increasingly uneasy with the thought of returning to face-to-face learning. And it was because Dr. Katz in particular and Ed Rivers, again, eminently helpful, but Dr. Katz, an epidemiologist, and I'm not, talked about how we were having a surge in cases and that the surge was uncontrolled and unstable. And that was the factor that really concerned him, which obviously concerned me. And knowing that was the case, I was starting in my mind to prepare to come in front of the school board at that point and suggest that we start the school year full online. On July 17th, the governor issued a proclamation that said face-to-face learning would be our primary model, and we had to do that at least 50% of the time. Now, we planned for that eventuality, but I'm still concerned about it given the fact that we still haven't seen the flattening of the curve here in Scott County in my most recent conversations with Dr. Katz. So we're prepared to have our students come 50% online, 50% face-to-face. We sent out that plan to our parents on Friday. There's a great deal of information everywhere from what that looks like in terms of face-to-face with regard to schedule. 5 out of 10 days of 10 school days would either be face-to-face or either online, and hopefully provided enough information for parents to make a sound decision based on whether they wanted to have their students go full online or they wanted to participate in that 50% model. I did not have any sense of comfort in talking to Scott County health officials that full-time face-to-face instruction on August 24th was something we could manage in a safe manner. There was no way we could, for example, have the 6-foot social distancing in our classrooms. Our classrooms are just not big enough to have 24, 26, 28 students in there and properly social distance. So the team, we got together and we felt that the 50% model was the best way to go. I know it doesn't make everyone happy. The piece I struggle with the most with this model is knowing that there are a whole host of families out there that are struggling when it comes to daycare. I get that. And so are our teachers for that matter. They have to figure out, all right, well, if my student goes to school 5 out of 10 days, what am I going to do with my child those other 5 days? And it's just a factor of safety. And if I had the ultimate solution for that, I would certainly try and put that forward if I had the answer that solved that problem. And that certainly causes me distress. And for the parents that are stressing over that decision right now of where to send their child and what to do with their child, I can fully empathize with that. But I do believe the 50-50 model will keep our community safe. I would still prefer to go full online, knowing that we haven't flattened the curve yet. But for us to go fully online on August 24th would require a waiver from the governor's office. And it is not a Department of Education decision. It is a decision from the governor as well as the state health department officials. It is not in the hands of the school board here in Davenport. It is not in my hands, and that decision is not in the hands of Scott County health officials. However, unless I hear differently from Scott County officials, my preference is to at least have that option in the event that things don't get better by August 24th. And if they don't, we have a team of teachers and staff members that are ready to go full online. We've learned a lot from our fourth quarter experience this year, and we have an instructional model that I believe is very robust and will manage all the learning standards that our students are expected to meet for the school year. So I'm confident in our full online program. I'm also very confident in the 50-50 model as well as our face-to-face learning. What still concerns me is what are the health conditions going to be on August 24th? So my intent was to ask for a waiver. When we ask for a waiver, it doesn't mean we have to take it. Maybe things will get better the third week of August, and all of a sudden we can start 50-50 and be perhaps a little bit more aggressive. But I've learned over the years that the more options you have, the better. And it's my preference to ask for the waiver. I believe the health circumstances with regard to COVID in Scott County warrant the application for a waiver. Now, we were told that we don't know what that process will look like until August 1st. With all due respect to the governor's office, I can't wait till August 1st to submit a waiver. So my plan is to send a letter to the governor tomorrow, asking if we could be considered for a waiver, asking Dr. Katz in Scott County to help me with the data so I could make the case for asking for a full online waiver. But I did state that I would like to have board discussion on this, but that is my thoughts. Now, the board did pass the COVID resolution, which gave me the authority to shift gears and move this in any direction. But I do want to hear from the board what your thoughts are on applying for this waiver, hoping that we won't need it, that the conditions of COVID will be mitigated over the course of the next month. But if they're not, and if a worst case scenario is that they get worse, I would like to know that I have that option to go online if we need to do that. And again, time is short, and I do apologize for parents. We're going to ask them to take a survey this week, whether or not they want to go with the voluntary full online. And I've heard from a number of parents who have said to me, I'm not sending my kid to school because I have a husband or I'm sick and I can't afford, my kids to bring home any germs. So they're going to go full online, and I fully respect that. But I also understand too, the 50% model does present childcare challenges. There's just no doubt about that. But our issue is we're starting school in 4 weeks, and I need to know from our parents and I need to know from my staff who's coming back on August 24th and in what context. So I apologize for the timeline. It got a little messed up with the July 17th announcement from the governor. But if we can get that information this week from our families, we can start working our staffing models so that we can meet our needs. And on August 24th, have a first day of school that is productive and meets all the expectations of our parents, staff, as well as our students. So that's the update. Return to Learn. It's on the website. It's a pretty extensive document. It has a lot of information in there. As we're starting to get questions to the email address that we have in there, we're developing themes for those questions, and we will be putting out a frequently asked question this week that hopefully will aid parents in their decision on whether to send their child fully online or with the 50% model. So you know everything I know right now, but it is my intent to request a waiver. Don't know what that process will look like. I'm just going to submit a letter on behalf of the school district and hope that that's an option that will be available to us, especially given the current COVID conditions. So I apologize for the length of this report, but obviously this is a very important topic right now. I'd be happy to take any questions from the board.
Director Klein Jerome.
I have a couple questions. Are there going to be teachers that will specifically be assigned to do the online classwork? I would find it very difficult to say, okay, you're going to teach 50% of the time in the classroom and you have to do the online classes as well. So are we designating staff to just take care of that portion? That's my first question.
So let me answer that one first because it's a long answer. So if I'm a third grade teacher, I'm going to see my entire class 5 out of 10 days, but the 5 days that I don't see them, I have to offer them instructional resources and materials that will keep them engaged. So, I'm teaching not only face-to-face 50% of the time.
Can you please mute your phone? Thank you.
So, but we also have teachers that we know perhaps will not, for reasons that we described with our policy that we just approved, that will not be coming into the building, and we could certainly utilize those teachers to help with the students that will be going fully online, I can have the teachers working just with those students. But Corey Guy, I think you're still on the line. I know your team and your teacher expectation group has been working on that dilemma, knowing that if you're a teacher and whatever grade level you decide to look at, Karen, I'm not being dismissive at all of your concept. It's a heavy lift for a staff member knowing that if you have a class of 22, you're going to see 11 of them in person, but you still have to interact with the other 11 virtually. So it's a heavy lift. And Corey, could you help describe what our vision is for how to make that task manageable for our teachers? Are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line. You can hear me good?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, good. Yes, we're working hard on that, and Director Klein-Jerome is accurate. It is a tall task, knowing that I'm going to see students half the time, while the other half is going to be online. But we have created, working with the teacher expectations team, we've created lesson sharing guidance. So instead of having teachers having to create all of their own online lessons, we're going to parse that out to also create equity across the district so that we have common third grade ELA, science, social studies all the way up until middle school. It's going to look a little different at the high school, but we're creating some shared platforms for teachers to share their online lessons. Last year during our shutdown, we collected asynchronistic videos, and we have all of that compiled into a library. So we are working very hard with a group of educators, our educators, who are dedicated to ensuring that we're ready for the students that come in the classroom, but also prepared to help the students who are at home.
Karen, you had another question?
I did. We have a policy, it's 402.12, that deals with teachers, and it says no release should be expected on less than a 30-day notice. Teachers will not be released from their contract after August 1st. First of all, I was not on the board a year ago, but I went through and this policy was not followed. 19 teachers, I believe I counted, were released after August 1st. Some up until school had already started. I guess I would like to say I would not want to see us holding teachers accountable to this, because if their expectation was that we would start off online and now with the governor saying, nope, you're going to be in the classroom, there may be some teachers that say, I just can't do this. I absolutely cannot do this for health reasons, mental health, physical health, whatever it is. I would not want to say, oh, sorry, too bad you missed the August 1st deadline and you can't resign. So I just want to point this out that I think we should set this policy aside because that would be a heavy load to say to somebody, oh, you missed the deadline, you have to be in there.
Karen, I'll have Jamie answer that question. It's a very good question.
Hello again. In relation to your question, from an HR standpoint, we're not really receiving resignations or questions about resignations due to COVID. We have had an influx of accommodation requests, and we did formalize an accommodation request process essentially because we have been getting so many questions. So those are all going through Danielle Heller, and TJ, Jamie Krager, and myself are reviewing those, and we'll be having meetings with those individual teachers, but also tying back with Corey on where there's availability for the online learning. So hopefully there's through some accommodations, through FMLA, through the emergency FMLA and such, that there's some comfort for the teachers that they don't necessarily have to resign at this point if there's that fear of coming back.
Okay, but if they choose to resign and it happens to fall after August 1st, would we be denying that?
I think that would depend. If they're resigning to take a position in another school district, that might be a little problematic, but we'll certainly have
and I agree.
Right, but I think if someone's resigning, to me, it's more of a, I'm leaving education, and we're certainly not going to force anyone to any sort of employment that they have no desire to be in. But the only issue I would have, like I said, is if a teacher was resigning to take a position in another district. That might be the exception that we would still say no to. But if someone just wants to take a year off, a sabbatical, for example, we have that as an opportunity as a school district. So I'm hoping there are enough potential solutions that wouldn't force a teacher to feel compelled to resign.
Okay.
And that goes for any other staff member too.
Director Poston?
Just a follow-up to Karen's questions. When a teacher's teaching online, are they going to be on-site?
Yes, unless it's a teacher that we've either made an accommodation for, that can't be in school because of health conditions or something to that effect. That teacher will be teaching online. But the teachers who do not have that accommodation will be in the building every day because they will have a class coming every day of the week. It'll just be half of the class that they'll see face to face, but they'll be here in our buildings, yes.
And how will that be monitored?
Our teachers are required to be here every day, and we take attendance with our teachers. If for whatever reason they're absent, they would have to put that absence in the system. But our teachers have a classroom that they're responsible for, and if for whatever reason they're not there, they have to procure a sub and follow all the procedures as if it were a normal school year.
Okay, so a teacher that's teaching online is absent for the day. How are you going to fill in with subs that maybe aren't prepped for online learning?
So as Corey Guy mentioned, we have a number of shared lessons that are sort of a library of lessons that we can use. And we can have our teachers take on an extra class just by sharing that lesson. So there isn't the prep work and the extra work. It's just for that day, we're not bringing in a sub from outside of the system that has no idea what we're doing. We have online teachers that are sharing all of their lesson content and delivery systems, and one teacher will just take on an extra class for that day.
Mr. Vice President?
Director Beck?
Sorry, I'm trying not to interrupt. I have a couple questions as well. First of all, I want to say thank you to the staff and teachers for taking on this Herculean effort. It's frightening. I lose sleep every night trying to figure out how my classes are going to run in just a couple weeks. But I have two questions, and I know that these are addressed in the documents a little bit, but I was wondering, Dr. K, if you could speak specifically to two things. Number one, accommodating students with IEPs or 504s, like what steps are we taking to ensure that everyone's needs are being met? And number two, accessing students who are in situations with perhaps without reliable internet access or less stable home situations and things like that.
Those are two very good questions. So our special education teachers are meeting right now, and we are reconvening IEPs for every single student that has one, knowing that in a most likely scenario that will be in a 50% mode. What does that look like for special education students in terms of adjustments and modifications to their delivery models? The goals are going to be there and they're going to be the same, but the work that we do will certainly look a little bit different if we're in a 50% online model. So we will reconvene every single IEP. Dr. Schmitz and her team are already at work, assigning all of the case managers to make sure that we're organizing and have all of these IEPs conducted prior to August 24th. And these will be individualized conversations with individualized decisions. There are no group practices or group policies that we have in place that is guiding this. We are going to look at each individual student's needs and how could we meet those needs under the environment, whether that be a full online or a 50% model. But right now, planning for the 50% model, thinking that's most likely going to be the scenario that we're going to be under, and that would apply for students with 504s also. I will state that the IEP teams do have the authority and ability to suggest if a special ed student requires to be in school every single day face-to-face. We know we have some students that have those types of needs. And again, that'll be completely dependent on the determination of the IEP team. We will ensure that our students with IEPs and 504s, we are moving in the direction of satisfying all of their needs and meeting all of their goals. So I know the team is hard at work scheduling those meetings right now, but again, it's all designed to make sure that we can manage all the modifications that are necessary to meet the student goals. So that was the first piece. I know Gary Sloat has been working very hard with MediaCom and trying to identify and reach out to families that have accessibility issues, and I'll let Gary give you a little bit of an update with that. But I've also been meeting with local community leaders. Just had a meeting the other day with members of the NAACP, and I asked for their help, as well as the help of local spiritual leaders to reach out to their communities and let them know that we're here to help, let them know that we have a plan to give them internet access, but we have to know who they are. So we're in the process of identifying those individuals. It's a community effort, literally, right now. Sometimes it's a name coming here and a name coming there, but Gary, could you provide the board a bit of an update with regard to the status of the MediaCom contract that they approved and how that work is progressing?
We have provided MediaCom with a file, and they're reaching out right now to all the people on that file to establish an installation period. The installation is going to be as much of a non-touch situation as possible. A bag of parts are handed off to the family with the instructions in them. The MediaCom installer remains on site to help guide them should they have any problems and try and ensure that they've got a connection before they move on. A lot of our work right now is in an outreach means to identify families that may need internet installed. We're doing this through multiple venues. We've got a flyer that we've created that is going to go out with the remaining school lunches this week so that we can get that flyer into the hands of all the people receiving those lunches. We are doing the dialing campaign that I already mentioned. In that campaign, we have a survey that asks if they'd prefer to have a live person call them and talk to them. And so we're collecting that data. And the buildings themselves are going to be providing teachers who are interested in helping us make these calls to reach out to the families and collect their information so that we can share that with MediaCom as well. So it's a multifaceted front going forward, trying to identify and get these installations done as quickly as possible.
And Allison, one more piece with regard to our outreach. We're looking to work with our local media, both in print as well as visual, to help with public service announcements, that families could be alerted to this and share that information as much as possible. So as Gary mentioned, there are multiple pathways from an outreach perspective. We're trying to include asking pastors to put it in their sermon. So we're trying everything at our disposal to connect with families to make sure that every student has an equitable opportunity to participate in their education.
Thank you very much. I have one follow-up to your to my first question and your first answer. So I know you're reconvening all of the IEPs, but we know that that's not the same as delivering the services. And I do really appreciate the fact that we're prepared to take some students in full-time who may have that need. I know it's a small percentage, but I appreciate that. So do we have specific steps in place to monitor the delivery of our special education services over and above what we might be doing typically, since some of this will be online?
I'll defer to Dr. Schmitz. Dr. Schmitz, are you on the line? She might be muted. She's not on.
Oh, she might be coming on now. Maybe. Isn't she a 515?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm
Yeah.
hoping that Dr. Schmitz can hear me and my request
Yes, I can.
Can you, Sandy?
Yes, I can. I can.
Thank
and
you.
I'd be happy to ask the question. If you ask it again, please.
Sure. So this is Director Beck. I was just saying, you know, you're reconvening all the IEP meetings right now and determining the appropriate services needed. And I was just asking if we had, because we know that, you know, having meetings is not the same as delivering the services. Do we have a way of checking and making sure that we are delivering the services over and above what we typically do, since some of this is going to be online? Do we have some special ed people specifically for checking into how to make sure that our students are getting the services that they need, even if they're not in the classroom?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we had started doing some of this even prior to COVID, as far as putting some of our coaching and modeling and monitoring of services back at the building level. And so we have a role that we call a special education facilitator. And I'm very excited because we were able to almost double the number of people who do that role at the elementary level this year. But their role is to really monitor the data, to find out if services are not being provided. That would be a very serious thing that we would get into immediately. But also to monitor or to coach teachers who may be struggling, especially during this sort of situation, to provide those services. So we're going to be looking at it very closely, as I said, not only to make sure that kids are getting what they're supposed to be getting, but also to support teachers who might be struggling with this new format.
Thank you.
Hang on. Director Hayes, did you have something? I thought you had chimed in earlier.
I did, thank you. We had talked at one point about the parents that work during the day and the students with online days that needed assistance. Did we have a plan set out that there would be someone available in the evening if necessary to help some students with online work?
Corey, I'm going to turn this to you because that's a conversation we've had. Has your team discussed this further since you and I last spoke? That's for Corey Guy.
Yes, so the online lessons are going to be provided in a asynchronous way, so that at any time a student doesn't have to log on necessarily during the morning hour to access the online learning in the 50% model. So, and then we're going to be working closely with HR to identify support for students who need that support after school hours.
So for example,
the online learning portion, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Corey, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. I'll finish when you're done.
So the online learning portion is going to be videos. It's going to be explicit instruction with some independent tasks that students can do. We have an online learning platform that we will be getting for our pre-K through first grade that's a lot easier for parents, for students to access. So it will look different than during school closure. And then we will work to try to find support with teachers that we have on staff for those after school hours.
Thank you, Corey. And I think, Linda, that's an important point. We may have some teachers that have the exact same issue that our parents have, in the sense that they have childcare responsibilities during the day. And we're hoping that perhaps we could utilize those teachers in a non-traditional off hours such that they can be of support and help to our students and solve two problems at one time, if that makes sense.
It does. And I just want to thank each of you all that are working on this, because I know this is a struggle for everyone. We're dealing with something that we've never dealt with in the past, and prayerfully never will deal with it again. And it's almost like we're making up the rules as we go along. There's no playbook to follow for this. And I just appreciate the flexibility that everyone's putting into this to make it work somehow, because that seems to be community concern. You know, I'm not ready to send my children back to school, but what other alternatives do I have? So thank you for all your support that everyone's put into this.
On behalf of the district, thank you for the kind words. Thank you.
Director Poston, did you have something?
Concerning our special ed students, once we get started on the return to learn, will there be an opportunity to possibly get all our special ed students full-time into classrooms if there's enough classrooms open up for that?
I'm not sure I could answer that question today because that's going to depend on staffing levels and how much staff that I have available. And I don't know if Dr. Schmitz, if you've projected our staffing levels in relation to potentially having all of our special ed students back, because it is a significant portion of our student population, and we would just have to make sure that we're not creating any social distancing issues because now we've increased the density within our schools. So I think in the very beginning, it's certainly going to be a prioritization. If at all possible, I would certainly advocate for allowing that. If we could make it happen, we'll certainly try to make it happen. But today, I can't make that promise that it would be for 100% of the students.
Well,
Go ahead,
Sandy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The other issue with that is, and this is often not understood by a lot of people, but and we can talk. I'm very much looking forward to our committee of the whole meeting in August, where we can have a real discussion around many of these issues. But many of the largest percentage of our students with IEPs actually get their special education services in general education. So they're not pulled out. So it would be very difficult for us to bring them to school if their general education peers are not there. But for those students that I believe you're talking about, Director Poston, that need perhaps more intense services, more intense time, with their specially designed instructions, that's exactly what the IEPs are going to be talking about within the next month.
Okay, yeah. I just still think, that as far as the special ed students are concerned, we need to have them as a priority. And my other concern is, and everyone is well aware that I'm in favor of 100% all students in class. It looks like that's not going to happen. The 50% online learning, I guess you would call it compromise. It's probably the lesser of two evils. But I want to go on record that I absolutely do not favor 100% online learning. And I don't feel that the superintendent should apply for a waiver. And again, we've had this discussion before, and we've come to the conclusion that we're going to agree to disagree. But that's where my stance is going to be. And I think everyone on the board should take a stance and go on the record as far as which return to learn program they favor.
Does anyone else have anything else?
I have a question for Jamie. Do you have a grasp of the sub issue? Like now that just an associate's degree, people can sub. Do we have a lot of people who said, I'm not subbing? Do we have more that are saying, yes, I will sub, or do we have a grasp on this?
Sure, we're getting our arms around it. We're not getting a lot of feedback that subs don't want to come and support. We started fielding some calls about what that's going to look like for them. Unfortunately, right now it's kind of it, it's probably going to depend on the day, on who the teacher is that's out, and what, if they're doing online learning or if they're in the classroom and what the classroom looks like. But we're not getting a lot of people. We had a lot of people, not a lot. We've actually had some concern that there's subs that feel that they might not be needed this year because of the online learning. So we're kind of getting some of the opposite feedback. So I think the way it looks right now, as of today, as things can change, we're looking good on subs at this point.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
Director Poston.
Didn't the states relax some of the requirement for substitute teachers?
Yes, now it's an associate's degree and they can sub for longer terms than they had previously been allowed to. But there's still some restrictions as far as the certifications and such. But yes, it's been relaxed.
Because wasn't long-term 90 days and now they can go 180 days? Or?
I believe that's the case. But I know with those special circumstances with the associate's degree, they can now go long term.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion?
In direct relationship to Director Poston's question, I would love, in an ideal situation, to see all the students in the classroom every day, but we're not in ideal times. I want to say it was Saturday, the first glimmer of hope I had seen since March, when there were 0 deaths reported in Iowa. However, there were still over 300 cases reported. I'm okay with the 50% model, but if, as a parent, and even as myself, I've said to several board members that I have 2 of the 3 underlying conditions. If children are required to go to school, I feel that I'm required to come into the boardroom and sit during the meeting. But children sometimes aren't as available and easily to articulate their feelings and concerns. And I feel, as a district, if we lose 1 child due to COVID, that's 1 too many. If parents are better with online and we get the waiver, I'm okay with that. The 50-50, I can live with that. But full classroom, 5 days a week, it's not good, in my opinion, for the students, nor is it good for the teachers, the custodians, the parents, anyone in the building. We're just not in a position right now where that is safe. And that's my concern. When we get down to where we can see that, great, there were no cases reported today, 100% we're back in. But until that time, I'm pretty cautious about getting our little ones, especially our special needs, the ones that, even our general ed students that have underlying problems. I'm not comfortable putting them in the schools and knowing they could potentially get really sick and even worse, die. So that's basically how I feel about going back to school now.
Mr. Vice President?
Director Beck.
I'll register my stance here as well. I've gotten letters and emails and comments asking to be in school full-time. I've gotten a few more asking to not be in school full-time. And as you guys know, I've inundated you with scientific articles and information from the CDC. Even when the CDC updated their guidelines, every bit of guidance hinged on the fact that risk is low in places with low community transmission, and we are not in a place with low community transmission right now. Despite the proclamation from our governor, we also see in the CDC guidelines that local health officials should be involved in this decision along with the community, and it should be transparent. And I think we're doing a good job of including the necessary people in this decision. I would love to have all of our children in school 100% of the time. That is the most equitable thing we can do. That is the most fair, and that is the way we get all of the students who don't have services and need services. But that being said, it is not the safe option right now. And we know that the children who need the most services, unfortunately, also tend to be the children in families who are most at risk from complications for COVID-19 due to a lot of reasons. And so I can't in good conscience, even though my 11-year-old is asking me if he can go back to school, I can't in good conscience send all of our district's kids back to school right now with the conditions we have. When our transmission rate starts to go down, we're all wearing masks, we're all doing the things we need to do. Yes, I know that children tend to be lower in transmission rates, but kids 10 and over are not. I don't want to ask our teachers to put themselves in harm's way. I love my job, but I'm not going to sacrifice my life for it. I want to do what's best for all of our district. And I know that no matter what we decide, some people are going to be very upset. And I didn't run for the school board to make easy decisions. Now, I didn't sign up for pandemic decision making, but given the situation we have, I am for the hybrid model. I would prefer to see a little less time in class face to face, but we got to work with what we can. And I am confident that the administrators and the local health officials, Dr. Katz, have come up with a workable plan with 50% in-person learning. That's where I stand.
Thank you. Director Klein Jerome, did you want to enlighten us on where you stand?
Yes. I could not in good conscience say it should be 100% back into the classroom with our numbers rising, the health department saying this is not safe. I can live with the 50% model. And if the numbers keep going up and we have to go online and we get a waiver to go online, I can support that as well. It's not going to be forever. We're not looking at this as, oh, we're going to be online the entire year, hopefully. Let's keep our fingers crossed. But the comments are always, well, children don't get it. Children don't get, junior high and high school kids get it. And they can spread it. And we also, too often I don't hear, but think of all the adults in the building. Your food service, your custodians, your secretaries, your administrators, your teachers. That's a lot of adults who could get this. So I can support the 50% model if that's our only option for hybrid. And if we have to, because the numbers keep going up, go to an online basis for a while till things start to calm down, I can support that too. I cannot support 100% in that classroom.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else?
Dan, this is where you channel your inner Ralph.
I'm letting everybody else go first, and then I'll do my thing. Director Poston.
Now, I just want to follow up with some of the comments that have already been made as far as the DSAT team. I've been sitting in on their meetings, and I've just been so impressed with all the work they've done. And again, obviously this has not been easy to do, but they've they've really hit this hard. They came up with the different scenarios for return to learn plan, and they were under the gun as far as a time frame is concerned. So all those people on the DSAT team, the subcommittees, I just, my hat goes off to you. I'm just so impressed with what you've done, and we're fortunate to have you in the school district.
My turn. First, I do want to thank all of our staff for all of this. I'm talking all the way down to the custodial, the food service workers, the paras, the teachers, administrators, everybody that makes this thing go around and, has offered their input, has stepped up their game to make sure everything's going to be sanitized and everything like that. To answer your question, Mr. Superintendent, I support you going for the waiver wholeheartedly. No two people are the same, right? There's people with underlying health issues or a family member with it or things like that. It's difficult decisions. I'm the Little League president. We canceled our Little League season because I couldn't hold myself if something happened to one of our players or their family members. That'd be something I would have to live with. It's a very hard thing. It's crazy times we're in. And not only for our students, for our staff as well. And I think everybody else has said it very well with what they've said, and I agree with it. At this point in time, no way could I go for a full, right in the classroom right there with everything that's going on. Because, yeah, kids weren't affected, but when did we shut schools down? In March. Your malls aren't really open. A lot of things got shut down, right? But the adults are still going to the bars and restaurants and everything else. That's why you're seeing it in the adults. The kids were at home. Now you start seeing a little more because you had baseball came around and you had baseball tournaments and stuff like that. It's unprecedented times. No one can say who's going to get it, who's not going to get it. I hope eventually they come out with some kind of antibiotic for it or whatever they can, make for this thing, and hopefully it goes away sooner than later. But again, everybody's worked their butts off for this, and then have the governor step in and, my opinion, way overreach her bounds. But hey, I get it. You got to assert your authority where you feel you need to. To tell individual, to just tell everybody, every place is different. For my work, I cover the whole Midwest. There's no two places the same. There's different people, different businesses, just different communities. For her to say one standard generalized thing, I think is ridiculous. But that's me. That's Dan Gosa. That's not a reflection of this board at all by any means. And again, my wife and I keep having that discussion on if we're going to have our kids do full online. We have family members that have health issues. Anytime I leave my house, I have my mask on. And, a lot of businesses are requiring that now and stuff. And some people have problems with it, and it's like I said, it's a catch-22. You're not going to please everybody. You never are. You never can. Never. No matter what you do, you could do this thing, but someone's upset about that thing, and then you correct that thing, and then now someone else is upset about that. You're never going to please everybody. It's just not going to happen. But in my mind, I have to do what's right by our district and, our students, our community, our staff. And at this point in time, no way would I support going full-time in the classroom. I could not do it. Whether that be that Governor Reynolds came down here, and I'd tell her that if she was standing right there. Everybody on this board knows me. Everybody who watches our meeting knows me. I'm not afraid to say what I think. It's crazy times right now. I'm so glad we were able to work with MediaCom to try to get internet for all of our students and stuff, and that was one question I had for Mr. Sloat. What happens since all these kids have these Chromebooks at home and we haven't had them, and then they go back to start school and they don't work, or I'm assuming they're probably gonna need to be updated and stuff, because for how many months, I imagine during the off season, you guys are upgrading them, fixing whatever's wrong with them. So I'm thinking like day one, we're going to have like hundreds of Chromebooks coming in, and what do we do?
Well, the good thing about Chromebooks, and part of the reasons why we've gone all in for Chromebooks, is that they update themselves automatically every time they touch the internet. So as soon as we can get those devices aligned with the internet, they will start downloading the updates that they need. And there may be back a few layers and stuff. We hope the kids are actually online doing a lot of great things with them this summer. But there are going to be those instances where the Chromebooks themselves need a little bit of time to catch up. They'll still work, they'll still function. They may have to reboot them once or twice to get up to the latest version. We have that go on in our schools as well. Some have been set off to the side and they're not being used regularly. They have to catch up a little bit, but it's usually not overburdensome to get that done. So I'm pretty confident that as long as they got a charge in them, we can get them on the internet.
Okay. And as far as like the MediaCom thing, is every one of our households that need the internet, are they going to have it like the first day of school? Is that, or do we have like timelines, or?
Well, that's our fervent hope that we will be able to get that accomplished, and MediaCom has reached out to us saying that they're very interested in that as well. So I'm hopefully optimistic at this point, and we'll see how the first set of files that we gave them to get installed, what that kind of takes, and that'll give us a real indication of what we can expect for the start of school.
Do they cover our entire district? Like I'm talking the rural areas, and they do?
Yeah, because we cover about 109 square miles across Scott County, there are places where we don't have MediaCom service, but they are the primary cable provider in Bluegrass, Buffalo, Walcott, and Davenport. I think we're going to hit. We have the opportunity to hit a lot of homes and make sure that the kids are all connected.
Okay, thank you. And I did want to clarify. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I did not mean antibiotics. I meant like a shot or a cure.
Vaccine?
Yeah, vaccine. There you go. I was looking for that and I couldn't. I just got going and I couldn't stop.
Hey Gary, are we using our hotspots that we purchased, and the people who can't get MediaCom, could that work for them?
Yes, we're entertaining all kinds of avenues to do that. One of the challenges with if the hotspots require good cell phone signals, so there are some people that don't live in areas where there are great cell phone opportunities. I think Corey Guy could speak to that probably. But we do have other opportunities like satellite antennas and other means to help kids get connected who are in further rural areas. We're going to learn more as we go along and how that's going to play out for us.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything else? One final thing for me, I do want to make sure that whatever way we go, we're able to meet all of our special ed students' needs and make sure all their IEPs are fulfilled. I don't want the state coming back in and saying that this stuff didn't happen, which I'm hoping with our new director of special ed coming from the state, she'll be right on top of that, which I'm sure we'll get more in-depth discussion on that at the committee of the whole.
She came highly recommended from the state.
Okay, thank you. With nothing else, I will move on. Please note again that item 7.02, the special education update, was removed and placed on the committee of the whole agenda on August 10th, 2020. With that being said, we will be moving on to item 7.03, the preview of the August 5th State Board meeting. Turn it over to you, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So as everyone knows, we've been asked to appear at the State Board of Education meeting scheduled for August 5th. Last week, Friday, Board President Potts, Vice President Gosa, and I were part of a conference call with members of the Department of Education to include Director Lebo and Amy Williamson, and they just wanted to make sure that we were understanding of the expectations that the board had for our presentation. And what we heard during that phone conference was that the board is very interested in hearing our safety and security plan for the upcoming school year. Our board may recall that I presented an outline of the framework of all the action steps that will be taking place this year to mitigate any of the youth violence and to manage the violence prevention pieces that we have in the district that we share with a number of districts across the state. So I'd be more than happy to share that information with the State Board of Education. We were also given a new framework for how to manage the goals that we had in place for the past year. So we had a process and a system where we submitted information to the state, and then we had an approval process. Well, they're changing that completely this time around. So the goals remain the same. Those haven't changed. The one goal that was missing that was quite pleasing to me was the fact that you hired a superintendent, and that was one of your first goals for last year. So you got that one knocked out. But we certainly, not to make light of any of this, they're asking us to, make sure that we have systematized the work that we've done this year, and where we've had success, let's show them that we can continue that success and sustain that success. For example, with our evaluation system, they came in last year. We showed them that we were compliant with all our administrative evaluations as well as teacher evaluations, and they're going to ask us to do that again this year. We know that they will ask us to ramp up our work on, like I said, the safety and security protocols within our schools. We have to ramp up our work on disproportionality in particular. That was a topic that came up. We know that that's a heavy lift for us this year. But my responsibilities will increase such that not only do I have to provide a monthly reporting to the state, but I also have to provide it in very significant detail. In the past, Amy Williamson was responsible for speaking to the board on our behalf and explaining where we are in the process. That will no longer be the case. I'll be the only person up there speaking with the board, and certainly board vice president and president will be there with me. But the bottom line, at the end of the day, the other important aspect, in addition to the new framework for reporting, is the state will no longer be providing the resources that they have been providing the district in the past. However, they do expect us to comply and meet all the goals that they have laid out. So if we need support, and the board has goals that they have to manage, and I fully suspect that they'll bring Tom Lane back as a board and have conversations with him. That'll be at our expense. Similarly, if there are other avenues within the goal document that we have to manage, if the Board of Education at the state level feels as though we need some more support in a particular area, and I'll just say disproportionality for the sake of argument, they will have the right to send someone here, but where in the past they were footing that bill, that's going to be on us. So there's a level of we have to do the work, we have to finance the work. We will do the work. We're going to get all this done, and I'm going to assure the state board when I meet with them, and I'm sure Dan and Bruce will echo the same sentiments that we're on board, and our goal is to meet all the goals at the end of this school year and never have to report to the State Board of Education again and have our full accreditation. I'm confident that we will get there. It's going to take some more significant work this year, but that work, we're going to have to do most of that work internal on our own because the state won't be sending in the resources that they have in the past. I do know that they have a sense of urgency. They want to see this work get done. They want to see this work get done now. We assured them on our conference call, and we will assure them again on August 5th that we share their same sense of urgency moving forward. So that was my take on the conversation that we had, and we're hopeful that that we will meet their expectations and exceed those expectations by the end of the year. So, Mr. Vice President, I know you were part of that conference call. If there's anything you would like to add, I certainly defer to you.
Yeah, it was a pretty productive conference call. Basically, it's a strategic plan that they're going to have laid out, and there's going to be a grading system, and the board as well. We're going to have to grade ourselves every month on what progress we're making, and you're kind of going to have a score, and then there's going to be deadlines in there to meet certain goals, which a few for the board would be having some more board workshops and things like that. The other good part about it, the way that they want it set up, it's going to define you're going to have this person assigned to this task or this person assigned to multiple tasks. So that way we'll be able to grade where we're falling behind. So then we can put more resources to that to get it up to par where it should be. I was glad that they met with us. It is going to be at our expense if they have to bring anybody in. And I was going to recommend to the board that we look at trying to get Tom Lane back in here in some capacity and trying to help us out with some of these things. It's going to be a heavy lift, but it's what we got to do and we need to do, and we need to do it now. There was a very much sense of urgency that they want to get this done. And again, I think they're going to be voting on this at the August 5th meeting, and there might even be changes, I would imagine, if their board members have changes. But this is what we talked about is what they had presented to us, and that's what they're going to present.
So they operate much in the manner that we do. So we met with their administrative team, and the administrative team is going to present this recommendation to their board. So just like you as a board can make adjustments to those recommendations. As soon as we know what those become when they're final on August 5th, we'll certainly share those with the rest of our board and the community. But the final say will be on August 5th from the State Board of Education.
Do any board members have any questions? No board members have any questions? This is pretty important stuff. I would be asking some questions. I'm not trying to tell you what to do.
This is Director Beck.
Go ahead, Director Beck.
I also would support bringing Tom Lane back if it's feasible. I would like to know if we are going to be able to get any documents that are going to be shared with the board in advance or when you send them to them, so that we can preferably before, so that we can review them and make any comments. I plan on at least calling in, so I'm present at the meeting. But I'd like to know sort of what are the specific things that we are sending to them before we show up.
So I think you'll be pleased with the new framework, because one of the things the state board wanted to get away from was just platitudes and generalities of we're on track, we're getting better. We have to be very specific on the activities that are taking place and the results of those activities. So it's a much more robust document in terms of providing information not only to the state board, but to you as a local board. And I think that's my comment to Director Lebo was, I think it's a great document. Certainly requires a lot more work on our part in terms of preparing, but it'll certainly paint a far more accurate picture of where we're doing well and perhaps where we have some challenges. So I think, again, depending on how they finalize this document, because they presented it to us as a draft, and I would certainly defer to, the state administrators and the state board to finalize that. Once they do, I would anticipate that it would be a significant part of every single one of our board meetings, where I would present to the board the actual document that's being submitted to the state, and you'll see that on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
I will add, one of the things in there for the board was to make sure our meetings are at least 2 to 4 hours. that we cover multiple things along finance, special education, and there was a couple other ones. I think all they were looking for at the time, they were wanting to know who was going to be in charge of each task. And then I believe that's what they were looking for to have you send back to them, correct?
Who would have the primary responsibility to make sure that those things were getting done, and have some ideas on what that could look like?
Does anyone else have any questions?
Well, tonight then we've met at least our 3-hour goals, just to point that out. I bringing in other people, the right people who really are going to do something, could be very positive, but paying for them concerns me because we've cut and cut and cut to get our budget under control, and I don't feel like we've got just, this big pot of money to pay extra people. Would this mean we're going back into our budget and figuring out cuts to be able to pay for people? Is there going to be, do we have that wiggle room to be able to afford this? Do we know?
So that's an excellent question, and that's another one of those things that keeps me up at night, because we did not budget for any of these national experts that they're asking us to utilize, or even local experts from an Iowa perspective. I was under the impression when we were going through our budgeting process that, we were certainly looking at another year of partnership with the state. But we didn't find out until the last state board meeting that they were no longer going to fund that, and that happened in June. So that's a surprise to our budget, and we are going to have to be very diligent this year. And if the state, and again, it's not a request, the state can actually direct us to bring in a particular person, and they could actually pick that person, and we have to pay for it. We don't, as you know, with our budget cuts, we don't have a lot of wiggle room. We only built in approximately a little over $1.5 million of sort of contingency. As you know, that can go fast. So we're going to have to be very diligent as the year unfolds. And I will have to urge the state to be mindful of that, because again, in fairness to us, we did not budget for this new reality.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Does anyone else have any questions? Hearing none, we will move on to board requests. It looks like I have 6 of them. Oh. Make that 7. First board request from Director Postian. Data request 7/27/20. Have meetings in person, or have board meetings in person. Why are you making this request? Online meetings are disruptive and need more accountability for open forum. Is there a second? Is there a second? Was this for agenda item to have a discussion on this? Was that what you're looking for?
I guess it depends on how many people want to sit through what we sat through tonight with all the disruption. To me, that's not conducting a meeting. It's a circus.
Okay. Do we have a second? No second. Next agenda item, board request from Director Klein Jerome. This is an information request. Description of request. How many of the 8 vacancies that can be exempt from the teacher transfer procedures for meeting affirmative action goals have been held and filled by protected class applicants this spring for the 2020-21 school year? And why are you requesting this information? We need to hire a more diverse staff in all areas in the district. The language in the teacher contract has been around for years and has seldom been fully used. Is there a second?
Second.
That Director Hayes?
Yes.
When would you like this information? August 24th, 2020. Next board request, Director Klein Jerome. Information request. Description of request. How many teaching vacancies do we have? How many other vacancies do we have? Are we on track to have all vacancies filled by the start of the school year? Why are you requesting this information? Last year, we started the school year with many vacancies. We need to make sure that we are not in the same predicament this year. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
When would you like this information? July 31st, 2020. Next board request, Director Klein Jerome. Request for an agenda item. Description of request. The board should receive a side-by-side comparison of the costs of busing through outsourcing and bringing it back in-house. This request should show total cost paid to outsource busing versus total cost of paying salary and benefits if the bus drivers are district employees, and any additional costs associated with this. Also included should be when can current contract be ended. And if we should decide to bring the busing service back into the district, also what cost are we paying, example, buses, gas, etc., in our current arrangement? Is the current bus lot district property? Why are you requesting this agenda item? We need to be looking at ways to save money, and this is an option that should be explored. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information agenda item? At a regular Cal board meeting in October 2020. Next board request, Director Klein Jerome, for an agenda item. Board needs to hold a discussion about holding an additional regular board meeting each month or amending current policy. Why are you requesting this agenda item? With the Return to Learn plan reopening schools during this pandemic, Department of Education expectations and citations, we need to meet more than twice a month to stay informed on these issues. Having a set date of these meetings might avoid the emergency scheduling of meetings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
When would you like this agenda item? Beginning in August. All right. Next, board request from Director Hayes. This is a request for the policy committee. When major announcements are made, I would like a policy to require that the information to be shared with TAG Communications and the board prior to hitting the media. Why are you requesting this information? It really puts the board in an awkward position to be asked questions on issues that you have no knowledge of. It's just a common courtesy not to be blindsided. Is there a second?
Second.
And then when would you like this information? You didn't put that part, Linda. When would you like it?
Our next meeting. Maybe by next meeting.
Okay, thank
The
you.
next policy meeting.
All right, and then I think our final board request from Director Hayes. This is also for the policy committee. This is the one that you wanted edited, Linda, I believe. So you just wanted to say reevaluate policy number 401.08. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Why are you requesting this information? We simply cannot afford it. Our resources must be utilized where we get the most bang for our buck. Is there a second?
Second.
And then you would like this one at the next policy committee meeting. And that
Yeah.
is it that I have for board request forms. Are there any administrative reports?
No, Mr. Vice President.
That's it, right? We're done. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
All right, can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Meeting closed.